I think I swam too far. Oh, hey, it's fling flong. Does anybody know what Fling Flong's primary motivation is? Going once, going twice? Well, Fling Flong wants status, but he also wants to care for his dog, but he also really likes building scale models of ICBMs, and he's also hopelessly in love with Jessica. Yeah, but I mean his primary motivation, the thing that drives his character at the deepest level. Lucas, people can want multiple different things, you know that, right? Maybe, but we're not talking about people, we're talking about... This is a bold claim. People hear me say it and they get upset. But let me explain. All it means is that humans are endlessly complex and paradoxical critters. And surprise, surprise, the literal pile of words that is your character will never quite encompass the lived experience of a real human being. But do you really want that? I mean, look at your own life. If you just wrote down what you were thinking and feeling and doing in real time, 24/7, line by line, would that be compelling in the same way that your favorite TV show is compelling? Does your life have an act structure? Clear setups and payoffs? Chekhov's guns? Of course not, you're a mess. Any given human is going to be deeply uninteresting 99% of the time. But what if we took the remaining 1% and we polished it up and we organized it into a cohesive story? That's all I'm getting at here. I speak with a lot of writers who think their characters are complex because they have a bunch of different motivations pulling them in different directions. And they look at that and they think, okay, that's very human, multifaceted, dope. But when they actually start writing the character, they realize that it's not always super clear which motivation should kick in at which times. And even more disastrously, they don't know how to give the character an ending, because the Jessica motivation is fundamentally different from the status motivation ad nauseum. The character is a random grab bag of stuff that can't be connected succinctly. So you might think, oh, I see where he's going with this, trim the fat, efficiency, got it. But not this time. I think Fling Flong can be driven by a desire for status, a desire to care for his dog, a love of building scale replicas of ICBMs, and a deep, burning attraction to Jessica all at once. It's just that those aspects of his character need to be rearranged. Okay, this might be a little more scatterbrained than usual, but I'm gonna do my best to explain this. When you're dealing with a bunch of motivations, the first thing you have to do is determine the relationships between those motivations. It's a weird question to ask why someone wants to be happy, or why they want to survive, because those things are generally considered to be autotelic, which means desired for its own sake. But not everything we desire is desired for its own sake. A lot of the time, a desire is just a means to an end, or it's symbolic of a greater deficiency. For example, Fling Flong's desire for status could be an autotelic motivation, but his crush on Jessica could be an extension of that, because she's a very successful person and he's turned her into a status symbol in his mind. So his pursuit of her is actually an extension of a deeper psychological desire. I'll want to put this status ego motivation at one end of a spectrum, and on the other end of the spectrum is the opposite, humility and the feeling of being enough. That's where he needs to go. So maybe the dog is tied to that. The dog is a being with no concept of human success. The dog is the answer. But at the beginning of the story, he's so focused on this that he actually dresses the dog up in a costume to make it look like a more expensive breed of dog to impress Jessica or something. And the model rockets, well, he's been building those since he was little because to him they represent shooting for the stars and achieving your dreams. The irony is that he doesn't know they're ballistic missiles destined to blow up and hurt people. Maybe the moment he realizes this is one of the many steps in his arc to eventually embody what the dog symbolizes, to just be present in the moment and stop clamoring for success. And now all of those random dots I introduced are connected, because I was able to take all of my disparate details and stack them appropriately onto my thematic structure. This is the real meat and potatoes of the story down here. The Jessica crush and the dog and the rockets are all just symptoms of this stuff. This internal struggle Fling Flong has between ego and humility. So at the end of the story, when he decides to take his dog for a walk instead of calling Jessica for the 87th time, we know that it's not really about Jessica and a dog. It's about his own internal arc stuff. Again, what constitutes an autotelic motivation varies from character to character. Maybe they drive fast because they need to get to their destination faster. Maybe they just love cruising. Maybe they really care about someone. Maybe it's an ego trip. Maybe they don't have time to prepare food, and maybe they just love fresh, never frozen, pre-cooked, delicious meals delivered straight to their doorstep. Introducing the sponsor of today's video, Factor. I'm trying to bulk up this fall. Don't laugh. The problem is that I'm also a college student, and I also make YouTube videos, and I also work as a story consultant, and I also help out on student films. You get it. Time is a limited resource. A meal can take over an hour to prepare, eat, and clean up, not to mention grocery trips. That sucks. But a factor meal takes 2 minutes. You put it in the microwave, you ponder the mysteries of the universe, and oh wow, there it is, ready to eat. Swag. Some people put it on a plate, but I just like to eat mine straight out of the container because then I don't have to wash a plate. Hold on, have I just stumbled across the greatest thing ever? Well, I mean, surely Factor doesn't also offer microwave-free on-the-go lunch options. Oh, they do? Breakfast too? Holy wow. And juices? This is like some music festival shit. I'm not gonna lie, I use all of my brain power on other stuff. So when it's time to eat, I just want somebody else to send me some food and say, yo, this is the good stuff. No guesswork. That's what I'm saying. So here's what I'm going to tell you to do. You got to click the link in my description. You got to head to factor75.com or click the link below and use code HungryScriptMan50 to get 50% off your first Factor box. Do it. Get it done. Fresh food. Yeah, baby. I know you want to. Complexity doesn't mean everything should be a mess that takes 10 minutes to explain. In my experience, complexity builds out from a simple starting point. It's never and, it's because. The layers of a character's motivation kind of have a domino effect to them. She wants to be a pro athlete and she wants to please her parents? No, she wants to be a pro athlete because she wants to please her parents. Don't get stuck in and land. I'm going to pivot now to an area where the complexity problem is especially difficult. Mental health. Is it genetic factors, or is it external environmental factors, or is it trauma, or is it completely random, like eeny, meeny, miny, you have BPD? Well, I think most experts will tell you it's a combination, and also that you can't just lump all mental disorders under one umbrella, Lucas, and sure, fine, I get it. It's just that the kaleidoscopic reality of mental health is, shall we say, inconvenient for writers. We like setups and payoffs, clear cause and effect. We like the idea that growth is a linear thing that follows a 3-act structure and supports our poetic themes. I could write a character who starts out hating society and manipulating others for his own selfish ends, but who begins to realize the error of his ways and by the end of the story does a complete 180 and becomes a selfless hero. And everybody would be like, OMG, great arc. But the moment I say this guy has antisocial personality disorder, it's like, whoa, you're getting all medical. You can't just arc your way out of a mental disorder, Lucas. And none of this is helped by the fact that a lot of psychological and personality disorders exist on a spectrum. And the place on that spectrum where it becomes a disorder is often a matter of consensus, not hard factual indicators. I have some OCD traits. They were much more pronounced when I was younger, like I used to carry around a thermometer and check my temperature every hour. But these days, I got the whole situation pretty much under control. However, I know of people who have the same traits but amplified tenfold, and they have to take medication just to function in society. And I also know that every single one of us has at some point doubted their memory or experienced intrusive thoughts, but do we all have OCD? No. OCD isn't a little box in your brain that's either checked or unchecked. It's more complicated than that. The brain is a mess. That's why we love theories and models and flowcharts. They simplify things and make them digestible. And the same is true of characters. They're simplified, streamlined versions of humans. Characters aren't people, and we typically don't feel the need to represent their lives with the same paradoxical complexity that real life has. We focus on certain aspects of a character, the ones that facilitate the story we are trying to tell. And nobody has a problem with this. But as soon as it becomes a story about mental health, there's immediately a pressure to depict it one-to-one with reality. And the writer necessarily fails at this because a story is not one-to-one with reality. It's selective and deliberate. So what do? Good morning, viewers. I'm working in New Zealand at the moment. Kia ora. Basically been thinking about this topic and looking for examples that I could maybe pull from. I asked the homies in the Patreon Discord, and they gave me some great examples of mental health being portrayed in fiction, kind of tackling that complexity through a storytelling lens. And the biggest example that I got was Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. And at first I was like, oh, yeah. But then I was like, wait, does he arc his way out of that mental disorder? Like he's anxious about death and about, the end and his fate and stuff. And then that leads to realistic symptoms. But he still fixes it at the source. He still fixes it in a metaphorical kind of storytelling way, which definitely is not how PTSD works. But I don't really mind, again. So maybe that's it. Maybe you can take your fictional mental health crisis, and you can root it in your themes and in your kind of storytelling framework. But when it comes time to depict like the symptoms, you can still depict the symptoms as accurate in the way that Puss in Boots did. Yeah, I think that's my stance. As a screenwriting coach, I encounter many, many instances of the lonely, depressed character, like way more than you would think. It's by far the most common archetype I see in other people's writing. These characters don't know what they want. They're socially isolated. They have somewhere between 0 and 1 friend. They're usually a young person with a boring job. Their parents are typically in the picture to offer some level of encouragement, but the protagonist is just flat. No passion for life, simply existing, locked in their room all day, which is predictably described as messy. I can usually tell that I'm dealing with one of these stories because it starts with an alarm clock. And the first question I ask is, why are they like this? And the answer I get is, I don't know, they're just depressed. Yeah, but what causes this character to self-isolate and neglect their health? Depression. Yeah, but what do they want? What's their primary driving motivation? Well, they don't really have any motivation. And these conversations used to go back and forth without making any progress on these characters, because every time I tried to uncover meaning, I was told that meaninglessness was the point. But eventually, I found an angle. Instead of drilling these people about motivations and backstories, I started asking them one simple question. What does your character believe about themselves? Not everybody has deep-seated motivations or convictions, but everybody has a self-concept. And so the clients couldn't skirt around this question when I asked it. And lo and behold, when I did, the conversation would finally blossom into something actionable. We'd realize that the protagonist was not, in fact, stricken with vague, unspecific Kirkland brand depression, but with a particular self-concept issue. Maybe they believe that if they go out into the world, they'll be overwhelmed by the chaos of it all, so they stay at home and play video games. Maybe they believe that it's too late for them to make friends. Maybe they believe that the outside world hates them. Maybe they believe that they're doomed to fail at anything they try. Maybe they believe that they are a danger to others. And don't tell me it's all of those things. Pick one, decide on a core belief, and then work outward from there. To which the response is, yeah, but that's not how depression works, and I know, I get it. But if you place the burden of real-life accuracy on your work, it's going to be very hard for you to have themes. Unless, of course, your story is about making sense of the chaotic, random nature of mental disorders, which is fine, but if you're going that way, you gotta commit to it. You gotta build a plot and a cast of characters around the theme of indiscriminate mental anguish. Your story has to be to depression what The Fault in Our Stars is to cancer. Typically, though, these alarm clock, messy room stories end up being about heroism or morality, and so their attempt at realistic depression is at odds with the causal, agency-rich story they want to tell. These writers end up with a complex mess that's unable to support meaningful payoffs because it has no true foundation. You as a writer cannot let aimless characters exist in your story. Figure out what they truly want. Figure out what they believe deep down at the most fundamental level. Trigger warning for the empiricists, despite its commodification online and its flawed attempts at perfect interconnectivity, the Enneagram model does a great job of defining the different sorts of core motivations that exist in people. Studying the actual theory has played a major role in training my brain to think the way that it does. Cutting to the core of a thing, explaining it simply, and then building out from there, with successive layers of needs, wants, false beliefs, and insecurities. I think it's very telling that personality models often have something to say about mental disorders. And from experience, I don't believe it's entirely accurate to think that you are a perfect, pure soul and that your mental problem is an external force that is acting upon you. At least in my experience, it probably has some ties to your motivations, beliefs, and experiences, whether it created them, they created it, or something in between. So leaning into that connection in writing is not a complete betrayal of reality, it's just a necessary bit of simplification, though I still wouldn't use clinical terms unless I was trying to tackle the real thing. Bottom line, I think the instinct to beef up characters with different traits and motivations is misguided. Usually when I'm working with clients, the breakthroughs we have are subtractive. They're the moments when we say, okay, pause. Why does she suddenly want X? She's been driven by Y the whole time. Why are we trying to shoehorn X into this? Sometimes, like I went over in the first part of the video, you can find ways to arrange X and Y so that they both work together in the service of the character. Other times, though, you just gotta declutter. I don't claim to have some secret knowledge. I just teach what works for me. You can take it or leave it. But I have yet to encounter a character I found compelling that I couldn't make sense of. Even conflicts of interest and apparent paradoxes within a character should still be explainable. If you can't make a flow chart out of it, if you can't explain it simply, If it feels perfect in your heart of hearts, but when you go to actually write it, you don't know where to start, there's a good chance you don't understand it quite as well as you think.
The wheel of wow.
It's all ogre now. But as my patrons, or should I say greatrons, cascade down the screen, I want to take a moment to address the changes that have occurred on this channel. Yes, I delete videos sometimes. If I delete a video, it could be because I no longer agree with my past self, or because I want to redo the topic with more clarity in the future. I understand the notion of wanting classic videos to exist on one's channel in perpetuity as a sort of memory lane, but you have to remember that these old videos still get recommended to people. And when new viewers see those old videos, they don't have that context. They're gonna assume that I stand fully behind what I say in them, because as far as those people are concerned, I'm speaking in the present moment. So if a correction is too big for a pinned comment, I'll usually just nuke the whole thing. These days, I look at my channel as a single textbook that goes through successive iterations. So I'll add bits, subtract bits, redo bits, all in the name of curating the best possible writing toolkit. I've also been retiring certain videos to put some distance between me and the media discourse, pop culture, Disney Plus show critique scene. This is because waging online war to defend or besmirch a work of fiction, especially if one identifies so deeply with one's noble cause so as to construct and maintain a sort of supervillain persona around it, is an activity I'm now inclined to regard as pretty fucking cringe. That was my original vision for this channel, and I regret it, but I'm doing something else now. I've also had people tell me that they prefer not to see my face because they'd like to maintain the illusion of me being, quote, a little alien man. Needless to say, internet culture concerns me. I don't want to have a parasocial relationship with you, okay? I'm just a guy, I'm just a dude. Anyways, I'm back in the US now, no pirate activity, but we'll see how long that lasts. I'm working on some longer, more in-depth stuff. I'm hoping to bring in some guest writers to share their sauce, but all in good time. Until then, stay classy, keep writing. If you're picking up what I'm putting down, consider subscribing. If you're not, consider subscribing ironically. I'll see you in the space between spaces, homie.